Anyone who would like to share any observations, questions, or anything really? This is an open point. We only have one mic, so.
So thank you, Brother Ben. I really enjoyed that talk, and especially the visuals reflecting your stories. That really, made it more enjoyable. I love the story about the donkey. I've heard it before, but tonight I'm like, yeah, I really got it. With the shoveling and just surrendering and just getting that you will grow from it.
Yeah.
And nothing is static. We're always evolving and changing. And even, you're saying you're not your body. And yeah, I really like that. But I just wanted to ask you about the life after. What does the Buddha say? Does he believe in reincarnation, or do you go to other planets, or what does the Buddha say?
So thank you for your reflections, Janina. So there was a lot to unpack in that. Yeah, the donkey story. When I told it to Lorenz, he said, "Oh yes, very Jungian." Which was like, right, that psychological distress can be seen as a vehicle. A curse can become a blessing. This is really the way that just perception of things which may be bad, look bad, actually no. And the more that we're very capable of evolving. In fact, we would only evolve through challenge. Otherwise, we would still be like floating around in the sea. Right? Is that we grow through challenges. The work I did in the Philippines was like when somebody came with cancer, I was like, don't stay away. And I just thought, no, like the stories about facing the waves is like, go for it. And you, by picking up, in that case, compassionate aid, by picking up the challenge, you grow enormously. And it's actually much easier than the fear makes things much more frightening. But when you put that aside and you act with creativity, and then the courage comes, and you suddenly find that you're 10 times the person that you thought you were. When I first arrived, I was doing portraits at the Circular Quay, and it was going nowhere. I was like, lucky if I made $2. And I went, no, you're going to go to the top, places and just walk in and say, there you go, I can draw. And they were like, okay, yeah, there you go. They gave me the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald. I was like, amazed. So yeah, the donkey, things that appear to be pressing you down actually can be a channel to release. But if you're afraid of it, or if you turn it, into a self-pity or a victim, an ego, some of those haters, I am always me, you pile it on yourself and you don't step up on it. And also it was interesting that it was just like one little scattering dust and you would just not step up on it. But if you stayed there, go, oh no, I know, it would have built up. So it's like looking at things like in meditation. They're very small, but when you look at them like a huge thing, all my life, it's always been, then it's huge, because your life's huge and you think you are your body. And if you see your body as flux, then you don't have any history. You don't have any me, and you don't have any mind, and you don't have any backstory either. It can't stand there. These are some of the things that the Buddha talked about. Is about the Buddha never required anyone to believe in afterlife. It's like believing that there's the planet, Pluto, or planet Uranus or Jupiter. It's only when you have a telescope you can verify it. But then you have to buy a telescope, and they're expensive. And it's the same with future and past lives. If you really want to devote a lot of time, months, developing the capacity to recall your own past lives, or perceive something about other people's, you're going to have to invest a lot of time. And then there's no guarantee. Some people find that very easy, and some people find it very difficult. And particularly the more skeptical, But the Buddha said to people who came to him and said, we're not sure if that's really true or not. He said, well, whether it's true or not, do good things just in case it's true. And then you're going to have, because what I'm saying is if you do good things, you will find good results happening. And that's the reason why some people come in with a pretty easy life. Things come to them is because they gave things. And that's a good reason, you know. Sometimes if you feel, life's, but you reflect, hold on, no, did I do good things? Actually, I did. You know, I gave this and I gave that and I gave that other. There were good things. Or if you can't remember anything, maybe go and do some good things. So the Buddha was really about the meditations were a lot to just get, dissolve a sense of an ego. So it's, he wasn't encouraging people to believe in an eternal soul, but he didn't also quibble about it. He says, no point in quibbling about the belief in you've got an eternal soul or not. He says, but look in yourself, can you find anything in this flux which is continually going on? And he said, if you look in the way that I encourage you to look, you'll see that no, and then you're more likely to just not get reborn again. Because he wasn't just sort of saying like Edgar Casey or Helena Blavatsky or some people like, they were going, wow, there's this phenomena about rebirths. If you access their Akashic records and ask those devas to give you information about various people or your own past lives, then it's a phenomena, but so what? That just means you're going to get another life and you're going to go through many of these trials all again. Or you may get reborn in a very distant galaxy. And the Buddha was very aware of and making people aware of the enormity of the galaxy, not only the ones the one we have, but the nature of it expanding and contracting. So he said that when he realized and he looked back and he saw 5 epochs, he said it just keeps going on like that. He said we need to get out of this. We're in a phenomena. So even if we're there, if you meet aliens or UFOs, or if you extraterrestrial beings, they haven't necessarily transcended suffering. Even if the place that you go to and they live there and they're all dwelling in this really long lifetimes, which is what he said happens. He says that because some of those realms of light that they dwell in, they don't get aware of dukkha, they don't get aware of suffering, so they don't make effort. Whereas we do, if you really realize the nature of your body. I just watched my mother turn into a kind of crisp packet, crumple and die. She was from a very vibrant person. It was like, I think I'm getting a bit of Alzheimer's, and her shaking it. To her arms really collapsed. She could hardly lift, teeth were broken and everything. It was very pitiful. And the more the Buddha was saying, don't avoid that. Use that as a catalyst to realize the brevity of this short life. It's gone. It's like don't mess around. A lot of people just messing around. So also when I say life is surfing, it's not like it's not encouragement to go and just have a fun good time and boy life or just party and stuff. That's how we can waste the time. Many of us are even to be living in this society. You have a very good karma already, and clean, well managed, good air, plentiful food, abundant medicines, plenty of money around. This is like the first story about the Philippines and the man. I spent 10 years in the Philippines. I know you all know that, but I was in 5 years amongst a very deep poverty place. It was more poverty than I'd ever seen before, and it really was a big slap in the face for me. And that helped me to get out of being a sort of privileged Westerner and really wake up to suffering there, because we have very good free medical stuff in the UK. And they'd had none. These people were forced to pay, and they were forced to become sick, and they barely could look past sundown most of the time. And most of them were lucky if they had 2 coins to rub together. And they were the most unemployable. They were very, very old, or several children and a sick father, very hard to employ. Sickness everywhere. There's 2,000, 3,000 people in one suburb, and I'd go around every morning, 25 families, and they were all offered food. It was incredible, and I'm still in contact with that community. So I invested time with this question of rebirth as a teacher, because if you don't have any concept of that, your whole philosophy. I was walking from Fremantle Station, just walking along, and there was a guy staggering along and there was all those pubs. You got the touristy area, and they got loads of pubs. And there was a guy who was a right huge, hulking, great big character, with sweaty back, and he kept sort of stopping to sort of talk to the trees, then talk to a wall, and then like talk to no one, and then like plod on. I was like, whoa, I'd better cross the road, you know. Like it was like we had a few jars, and instantly categorizing him and judging him in like this. And then I walked right up to where they do the dog walkers beach, and it was a place up there. And I happened to ask someone where the washroom was, and they instantly directed me. And I looked, and there was that guy. And this was like 2 hours later. He'd just been walking in a straight line. I think I got a bus. I got a bus, and he walked all the way up there. And I said, "Look at that guy." And she said, "Yes, his name's Francis." And I was like, "Yeah, how do you know that?" And she told me all about him. And she said, "Yeah, he's got an aneurysm or something." And I was like, I felt really ashamed. She told me all about him, and she's frequently walked along, and she was with him, and she was a retiree counsellor for addict people, alcoholics, and so on. And it was clear, and she was like saying, "I'm just killing time, really." And when we talked about the alcoholic stuff, she immediately went into the thing that, society does that to people. So this is also very different with what the Buddha taught about karma, where with his philosophy, he does acknowledge conditioning, but he doesn't treat you as a blank slate, like the tabula rasa idea. He doesn't treat you like that you just come in as a blank CD and then society does it to you. And then if you get a bad parents and bad situation, you can just blame society. He doesn't. He says that you come in with a whole history of things. So that changes the way that you view people's situations and their ability and power to change it also. I don't know if I made the connections between those sort of like nodes there, a bit abstract, but it's very important. I just noted, I didn't say anything to her, but I did notice that she was taking on this, at the end of all her life, or working with all those alcoholics and everything, that she was just like, oh, society just, she had a very depressing sort of view about it, because it's like, oh, that's what happens, is you get damaged, society damages you, and then you damage and you damage and you damage. There's no kind of optimism or freedom. There's no liberation out of that view. So it's very, very empowering. Similarly with the Filipinos, I really had to sort of try to, do something there. I worked and lived in Egypt, where people are very much like inshallah. It's like the will of God. Well, you know very well, right? You've got Middle Eastern origins and stuff. Was that kind of thing? Like, I'll meet you at 2:00 tomorrow, inshallah. If God wills it, I'll meet you tomorrow. But then this powerlessness. There are many good things that happen out of many of those views and teachings that aren't happening in the West. No question. They won't do the haram, won't do crime, no, because God's watching. But in the same way, it removes a lot of the karmic aspect of intention, of that you're responsible and you will get the good or the bad from your actions.
Do you believe we choose lessons in this lifetime? Do you believe that you come into this life and you've chosen your parents? There are lessons.
When it comes to the holiday times, some people have got money in the bank and they've booked holidays. Some people come in holiday and they're still a mess and they're still pushing around a thing and they're slapping their wife. Some people are more in control of their lives and some people are out of control. So similarly, when people come into lives, some people have clarity of conscience and they're making very careful choices about where and who to live with. I do. I see that makes sense. I mean, that is not. I wouldn't say just belief. I think that's something that just is kind of common sense in some ways. And some people literally are. They're out of control. They die out of control. So it kind of makes sense that they will. They may be gambling or they might be addicted or violent. Or just enraged, like a lot of people. I saw Palestinian kids tried to stone me one time when I was walking out. I walked across Israel to the Dead Sea one time, and they were just like throwing. And I just looked at them, and they were like 6 years old. There was hatred in their eyes. So, I'm not judging on the situation. I don't want to go into that. I'm just saying that I was thinking, wow, they've got almost no chance to get out of that. mindset. And similarly with kids all across the world that I've seen in America. I counseled in Singapore. I counseled a very elderly man who wanted to suicide. He wanted to jump out his window, and that people called me in, and he'd been wanting to talk to a Buddhist monk. And I said to him, "Where do you want to be reborn after you've suicided?" And he was like, "What?" I said, "Like, where do you want to be? You're not an arahant. You're not fully enlightened. So you're going to get reborn. So let's discuss where. But let's talk about the country first of all." And he was like, because he just hadn't gone there. He'd gone like, this body's like an old broken television. Let's just smash it. He hadn't really thought beyond that. And that really, it pulled him. And I was saying to him, like, do you want to be born in a rich family, poor family, or no family? Do you want to be like, that could be pretty good. I said, where's the best? Why are you asking for a Buddhist monk? What's so good about Buddhism? He said, no, in my life, he was a merchant sailor and he went all over the place, but there were sometimes he went into Buddhist temples and it was so peaceful and he saw the life was there. And I said, yeah, I've stayed in those places. So which one do you want to, let's say you die tomorrow, let's talk about it, like booking a holiday, And I said, look, I've been in a lot of temples where you get orphans and they get dropped off. Do you want to be one of those? Because then you wouldn't have any family, you wouldn't have any parents to like squabble about. You'd just be like an orphan. And there was one of the reasons I reordained. Like I ordained for 3 years, 1986 to 1989. Then for 23 years, I went back to the world. I thought it was a good idea. Young and stupid. I came back in 2010. One of the reasons I did it, I was really like thinking about this question, like, is the rebirth stuff really real? How? But now we had the internet. Back in the 80s, there was nothing. It was just books and rumors and chatting with monks. So I looked on the internet, and there was this one story that really did it for me, and it was where there was a recording of a boy who was about 4, and he was chanting, like I chanted, that was about 6 minutes long or something. He was chanting something that was about an hour and a half long. And he was about 4, and it's called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. It's where after the Buddha was enlightened, he went up psychically went to all the different heavenly realms, broadcasting and they were broadcasting. Wow, like a Buddha's become enlightened, and all the devas and all the different beings on those levels were repeating this report. So it's that one. He did it word perfect, but he didn't just do it word perfect. It was the intonation, and both of his parents were not religious at all. His father was a drinker and his mum wasn't into religion at all. But his auntie was somewhat religious and she heard him and she said, you should record him. And I said, you record him, it's just noisy, And he would sit up in his bed, like with full lotus and doing that. So they recorded it and they took it into the monks. And the monks listened to it. And I've heard it as well. And they go like, nobody chants like that. And they asked him to come in. And this is a little boy, And he said, they said, how are you doing that? And he said, I was part of a posse of monks who walked from India to Sri Lanka, and we'd memorized the Tripitaka, and the Tripitaka is 11 times longer than the Bible. It's a lot, and that was the way it was transmitted. And the way it's transmitted is you couldn't do it on one. You'd have to have 3 monks, so they would sit together and they would all recite simultaneously until one of them glitched, and they would go woo, and they would rewind and they go do that again. And the other, whoever the majority got it right, they corrected the other one. So they would do that recitation. So he was part of these like recitation monks. I've met monks who can do this. In fact, my teacher's teacher is in the Guinness Book of Records because he could not only memorize. His name is Mingun Sayadaw. Mingun is an area, is a place, it's a city. Sayadaw means master, like a really super master. Mingun Sayadaw, and the Guinness Book of Records went to him. They recorded, and he said, like, well, name me anywhere in the books, just like name, do 3 or 4 lines, and I'll just continue and I'll do the rest. That's how they tested him, and they just went through place after place after place, and he could do it perfectly. So he said that the way he did it was it took him many lifetimes to memorize it, and that was his kind of job as a monk. And then he died. He went into an akasa realm, not an akasa realm, a basara realm. It's a realm of light, but they're still fairly cohesive and conscious, those beings, and they can observe what happens on the earth. So there was a sixth council, in Myanmar. This was in the 50s, 1953 or something. And then, so he got reborn to be ready for that. So when they did that council meeting, he sat on one side and someone called Mahasi Sayadaw sat on the other one. And Mahasi Sayadaw had the books all there, and he just tested him, and it went on for 7 days or something. So that they tested two things, that the current edition is correct, according to his memory, because it's from way back when, and vice versa, that he can remember. So that's a little bit of a digression. How did we get there? What was it? Oh, I was talking about the little boy. Yeah, so he is he's fully grown now, and he's become like the spiritual director of it's one of the big ones in the States, like Barre, Massachusetts, I think it is. IMS, I think it's IMS. And he has his own center called Niroda Center. But he could remember that life and many other ones that he talked about. So he was recalling that life kind of thing. But like I say, he can recall some interim lives. He said, "Oh, those were bad lives." Like he went and had some hanky panky in the middle, and then I came back again. Oh, sorry, I forgot what I was doing. I got sidetracked. If you open yourself to enough of those kind of things, that was like I said, when I heard that whole thing, that one and another one about an American boy who got shot. He said he remembered vividly getting shot down by the Japanese. He was taking off of an aircraft carrier during the Second World War, and neither of his parents actually believed in reincarnation, particularly his father. So he sat him down and he said, "Oh yeah, okay then." And his mum was really into it, and she was taking him to a hypnotherapist because he was waking up in the night screaming and shouting and trying to break out of a cockpit sort of thing. And it was repeated all these nights. So she took him to a hypnotherapist who got him to start talking, and she said, "This is what he's saying." And his pictures were all drawings of that. So his father said, "Well, where were you, and what was the name of the boat?" And he can name the boat. It says the Natoma Bay, and he checked it. Yep, there was a real aircraft carrier, and he could get in touch with the living members of the crew, and they said, and it turned out there was only one person who got shot down, and he'd always signed his name James. Well, he was christened James, and he signed that. But the one person who got shot down was called James, but that guy James had a sister who's still alive, so they Skyped with her and put them chatting, and she said, "Hello, James." He goes, "Do you like this picture?" And she pulled up a picture, and he goes, "Yeah, that's a picture Dad did for you. Where's the one he did for me?" And she was like, jumped up, and she goes, "Yeah, there was another one under the bed that the Dad had done pictures for two of them." She said, "Nobody knew about that. That's not fakeable kind of thing." Many more. Yeah, if you look about that story of either of those two, those things are. So those are all just also report, of the screen. Then we're limited in our precepts about too much. But if you get me in a good mood, I'll start telling you a thing or two that must get me more in trouble. But the reason for that precept, by the way, is that there are people who in the past sort of go around bragging of things that they don't really have, just in order to attract fame and fortune and stuff. That's the reason the Buddha was keen on that. But he himself would do it all the time. I'm not saying about hypocrisy. I'm just saying that that was one of the powers of the Buddha, was to be able to see like anybody. He just had to turn his mind to it, and he could just know not only a person's past life, but also kind of their death path. He did that on several occasions. It's kind of weird because it sort of implies a sort of bit of predestiny. I don't think it is that. I think he could do something else. But then he said, you're just not going to be able to understand by thinking about it a Buddha's mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a Buddha. That was one question. So to give you an idea. Well, that's helpful. Anyone else like to or doesn't have to be questions as well. It can just be sharing stuff.
So just going back to do you do the nirvana also?
Do I do the nirvana? It's like a dance.
You know, do you come back until you get it right and then you go to nirvana? Is that one of the...
So the question was, do you keep coming back until you attain nirvana? Well, yeah. I mean, nirvana means not burning, and rebirth means to burn. It's like as long as you're on that, as long as there's fuel, you know, like if you, like, I know very elderly people and they're just dying to go to Vienna and Italy and Switzerland, but they haven't yet. The desire is all still there. There's a lot of things that they still haven't done. It's burning away inside them. And yet time is limited. You know, not only that, there might be something unexpected like an earthquake or an asteroid or whatever, you know. It's like that will not go away. Desires like that don't just go. So unless you consciously, you know, extinguish all of those, you know, until you're just content and clear and calm in the present moment, then that's something like a nirvanic process of extinguishing desires, extinguishing egos which fuel the fires, and extinguishing hatreds and resentments and aversions. Those keep fueling the fuel like that. So it's not about sort of, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, I'll come back and see if I can get it this time. No, you haven't got any choice. Like, I've got a lot of friends who died, but no question, they would have been born. Hopefully, they would just been reborn as a human, because that's one of the good ones. There are some rough rebirths, and there's some very beautiful rebirths as well. But even rebirth in a heavenly plane is not nirvana. So nirvana is this extinction, like the Buddha said, he won't be reborn again. And the same with all the arahants. And there were many, many fully enlightened beings who followed his path, and they were like, "What? I'm done. There's no more seeds in the barn. I'm out. I have no desire to anything, you know." So then they say that once they get to that level, they have to become monks, you know, and they have to become monks. It's the only life that suits that, because most people are so busy running around planning another property and another 3 holidays and a career upgrade and scaling and something. And they still have too many desires that even if you give them time, you say, oh, I want to learn Chinese and I want to learn to cook, you know, this, and, you know, like there are many, many things that they're still grasping for that they haven't realized yet, but they're in the pocket, you know. They're kind of like, I just, you know, can't wait to learn piano and can't wait to, you know, all these different desires. But having no desires in a certain way that the path leads to, they say there are 4 levels, 4 stages. And they say it doesn't happen in one time anyway. It's a gradual thing. Like the very first time, many major chunks of karma, like the desire to have a family, will probably get much, much weakened. Many people, like the Filipinos I was with, they had no two ways about that. Boom, boom, boom. They were going to have, you know, there was always on the cards, the idea of that type of thing. So, and that's much the same with most culture. That's kind of normal. And so transcending that and questioning it, like, is this all there is to life? That's one of the sort of equanimities and the mindfulnesses, is like, wait a minute, you know, like if we keep churning out all these people, they're all going to die and they're all going to grieve and they're all going to lose and they're all going to miss and they're all going to, you know, and that yet they're still going to keep breeding and, you know, and so on. So definitely the Buddha advocated that, although it's not an easy path. And the Buddha realized, you know, he didn't want to teach it first. Once he realized it, he said, people don't want to know this. They want to get a faster chariot. You know, they want to invade the next kingdom. They want to learn, you know, they want to learn martial arts. They don't want to learn this stuff. No, not at all. And then he was persuaded. Deva, heavenly beings, who came and said, no, we've seen the Buddhas of the past, and there were many more. Like in my lineage, we talk about 28 previous Buddhas, and that was just this epoch. Is that they what was it saying? That I lost my thread. No, the 28 Buddhas. I was thinking about something else. Yes, go on, sorry.
You've spoken a lot about arahats and Buddhas, but I noticed that in your slideshow, which was excellent, by the way, you referred to bodhisattvas. And so I like could see a real Mahayana thread coming through, and I sort of was a bit confused. I thought, oh, are you Theravada or are you Mahayana? Or, you know, there was that thread as well. So I was sort of interested in, what's your view on bodhisattvas?
Good one. Before I became a Buddhist monk, I was a Robbie Zattva, as a joke. No, I'm actually a fusion. I consider myself a fusion. That was because I was originally solid Theravada, Vipassana and just insight and that's it. But I met so many selfish people who had clearly practiced a great deal. You know, I remember coming off of a 60-day, 16-hour retreat, and I saw one of the guys who had been on it, and he just sort of opened his newspaper next to someone else who was sitting next to the lamb, just sort of shoved him out the way. You know? And I was just thinking, like, there's something wrong. There's something, you know, often there's something missing. And then I've also had a big exposure to the Taiwanese organization, Tzu Chi Foundation. And the Tzu Chi Foundation have 10 million members. They follow the Bodhisattva path. And Tzu Chi means compassionate relief. So they inspired me. I was really like thinking, like, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life, just all, you know, walking, sitting, rising, falling, and just only the sort of Burmese style. And I suddenly realized what they were doing involved ecological awareness, recycling, poverty relief, medical and modern, and they were very much a reformist thing. And this really just resonated with something. I think also my Britishness. With British people, when you talk about Elizabeth Fry, William Wilberforce, people who are sort of like abolishing slavery, people who are improving prisons, people who are improving hospitals, it really resonates. We were brought up like that, you know, they just had all that. So when I saw, wow, there are Buddhists who are doing that as well, it kind of created a bridge that I could really like get very interested about. But I also noticed that the Taiwanese, that with their Mahayana stuff, they lacked the insight, the psychological precision, and the depth that the Theravada Buddhist had. So I tried to incorporate both of them, and I went to the Philippines to try to do that as well. So I was basically doing a Theravada practice while doing a Mahayana Bodhisattva practice. But just to clarify for those who haven't heard about this, so before the Buddha became enlightened, when he became enlightened, he's considered there. He's a Buddha. All of the lifetimes and anyway, the sort of times that he was somebody. Before that, he was considered a bodhisattva, which is a being who is on their way to enlightenment. They're not fully enlightened. So in many of those stories, he's clearly not that all that yet. He's very advanced. Like the one with the jewels coming down, that was the bodhisattva one when he was a young apprentice and he was with a teacher and all of that stuff happened. But there he learned to sort of get the jewels and give them for relief rather than seeing what the pirates and the bandits were doing, which was just turning them corrupt. So that's the sort of moral of that story. And many of the Bodhisattva stories, even when he was a sort of animal, you know, in some of his past lives. And he was learning to evolve, learning to psychologically and spiritually become awakened. Some people think that, you know, they see this as well. They see this sort of like me, I'm going to enlighten. I'm just going to stay in my room and I'm not going to touch anyone or talk to anyone and just do that. They do see that as too selfish. They see it as a selfish thing. So they decide, I'm going to suspend, my attainment of that because I can just see so much suffering around me. And they believe that that's worth it, you know, to delay doing that. So, which is, you know, both have good points in my opinion. I also noticed when I went to help, but I understand why people go to the room, you know, because then you're involved in material. You know, you try moving among the extreme poverty people and try to say, I'm going to teach you meditation. And we don't want meditation. We want school supplies for our kids. You know, my kids got, you know, his teeth are all rotting and they don't necessarily want that stuff. You know, they don't want that. Or the culture takes a long time, like Burmese. to, absorb that in like that. So, yeah, the body. Some people also, they have to deliberately kind of break a body's out of it. So I'm going to stop helping everyone else because it's exhausting me. Like the lady was helping, or her life, alcoholics as well. And there's the problem of who you're going to help. Often that gets worse. You get toxic charity. That actually you're exhausting yourself, but actually you're actually not really helping them. You're creating a kind of dependency. So all these things the Buddha weighed up when he created the Sangha, when he taught it the Dharma, which is actually sometimes it's just our lack of appreciation of it or lack of awareness of it, is that when you introduce the Triple Gem Sangha into a place, it works perfectly. You get all these people they can ordain. The way that they learn and the way that the aristocrats and all that, they come down to sort of ground level and they just walk barefoot with a bowl. They learn humility, and the people can offer, which is very, very much better to learn to offer than it is to learn to receive aid because of that dependency problem. It's very, very perfect when you see it working well, but not everyone understands it. Like in China when they destroyed it with Maoism and everything, is not everyone can always appreciate it, and it's not always that easy to see it in an uncorrupted state. Some countries now, and it's kind of a bit messy. Too many ceremonies, too many rituals, too many glittering palatial temples.
Something I've become aware of in the last few years and immersed myself in is the aspect of cultural Buddhism. So I did a lot of practices in Tibetan Buddhism with the Burmese and with the Bhutanese, and they sort of have this amazing ability to understand the teachings, but only to a certain depth. And if some of them are lucky enough to take the opportunity to really practice, wow, they really go far. But most of them are sort of now chasing the money in the West, and it's interesting because it only goes to a certain depth. And I saw this in Thailand as well. I went to stay there as a nun, and then I thought, well, hang that, because they didn't really have a very nice attitude about women. And it's really hard to be a woman in Thailand and study Theravada and be really devoted, because then you end up having to wash the dishes for the monks. Well, they're not working as hard as you are, but you don't get the opportunity because you're a woman. And I found that really difficult. But then it's this understanding of cultural Buddhism, and it doesn't really matter. Like, I've met people in the Muslim faith that are like almost true bodhisattvas, and just because they're not Buddhist, they think, wow, you must have been born into this, like, to do work here. Like, I've just found it quite interesting. But I found the cultural Buddhism comment that you made about the Filipinos interesting, because they've got, like, they're born into this, you think, oh, they're so lucky to be born into a Buddhist world, because I wasn't, but I was really attracted to it. But then it's almost like they're born with it, but unless you really have that yearning inside, you're not going to find it. I don't know, it's quite interesting for me, spirituality generally. Anyway,
that's I fully respect everything you said there. Anyone else like to? Yes, please. Okay, come forward a little bit because it's the limit of the microphone. You have to very come here because it's. Okay. So.
Thank you for the talk. I was just wondering why you decided to use surfing as the sort of topic of the slideshow. Do you surf? Are you allowed to surf as a monk?
No, it's simply a play on words, and the the topic of suffering. As soon as you mention it, people go, "Oh, I'm busy tonight. I won't be going to that one." is it's a topic that people find quite difficult. So it's simply this to lighten things up a bit. But the idea of when I stayed in Israel, there's a word called galgal, means a wheel. Sorry, it means a wave, but it actually means a wheel. So it's something like the samsara cycle, like that. And I like this metaphor that, waves coming and all the things. When I was walking in Yanchep, these signs, and they said, watch out for rip currents and all the different things, the dangers that they pointed out. I thought, this is really good metaphor. These are really good metaphors. The way that just the lifeguards and I can't remember all of them. I photograph on the signs. I want to use it in a future talk. But it was just like, the idea of, hey, surfing, great, fun. Because people do that with meditation. Yeah, I'm going to go in. And suddenly they get rolled like when you get on a surfboard and you just get like churned and smashed into the thing. That happens with meditation. Often, people go in with a very flippant, sort of frivolous attitude or a really greedy attitude or something. You've got to really respect the ocean. It will kill you, and there are predators and there are all sorts of things out there, all sorts of different dangers that you need to approach it very carefully and very wisely. They say like meditation without study is dangerous, and study without meditation is a waste of time, because you really need the experience and like that. So no, the play on words is just the Buddha has a thing called the noble truth of suffering. That's where it comes from, and I could not surf. I used to skateboard, but I'm pretty sure looking at I went out there and looked at the surfers. The other thing was where I sat near the surfers waiting for a bus. Those guys are rough. They weren't friendly at all. They were, what are you doing over there? They're not. I think they can be a bit glamorized. Do you know what I mean? It looks very exciting and very interesting, and I like the idea of it. But actually, like if you used up all your life doing that, and some of it take a lot of investment of time and energy, you could also just burn up good years of your life when you could be doing something more useful. So it's a kind of karmic indulgence in a way. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm a natural pleasure lover. Like I was a musician and a skateboarder and all those things. So all those kind of things do appeal. But that's why it's good to go see, the wake up stuff. Like I said, when I went to the Philippines, there was also ocean out there. But, you look at the ocean, then you turn around and go, oh, God, here it comes. And I'm like, oh, no. And there's handicapped children here dying of starvation and there's just 1,000 problems, But, if you walk around there and just open yourself up and say, yeah, I'll try and help, you're going to grow rather than just fun, which is kind of that's kind of our upbringing. We didn't even think twice, just go and have fun. Sledging and skiing, do whatever, motorbikes or cars as fast as you can go and music. We didn't really think anything about it. The purpose of life was just pleasure. That was it. There wasn't any question about it. So this was, really woke me up when I met the first monks and I was listening to them. I was just overpowered by how sincere and, they were working for nothing, basically. They're unwaged, and they were working tirelessly to help Westerners as well. And I was like, wow. That's when I joined. I was like, I'll help you. I really admire what they were doing. I thought about becoming a vet when I was young. I really, hurt for seeing abandoned animals, dogs, just left to wander the streets. So that, compassion-driven. Compassion is really something that can give your life purpose and meaning. But great skill in surfing, balance and lots of things. But it's like dancing. It's kind of like also a lot of balance and a lot of fear of rejection and overcoming of fears and things. So it's a balance. Anyone else would like to? thanks for commenting as well about that as well. Thank you very much. It's good to have some feedback on the work and see how it's gone down. Yeah. Yeah. No, not all of it. There was some that had Yoshida. Hiroshi Yoshida is a Japanese woodbook artist. So I interspersed my stuff with that. But I always showed it a credit, so you can tell the difference. Many of them are from the suttas, not all. Basically, I noticed that there was a pattern with Ajahn Brahm's talk. Like, that really puzzled me for years. I was like, how's he doing this? He keeps coming out with a new thing and a new thing and a new thing and a new thing and a new thing. I was like, how's he doing that? So I looked, and I found a kind of pattern. I used AI as well to do that, but I found there was a kind of pattern. Story, reflection, humor, insight, and then story, tactic, to go home with, reflection, humor. So like that. So I thought, well, I'll try that. Instead, because normally, like, I put in talks that I'd done for it to analyze, and it said, yes, insight, 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 insight. And I was like, no wonder, maybe it's getting a bit boggy for people, that they need a bit of refreshment before. People don't mind going in deep, but they need to come up for a fresh air, for a bit of a breather, and then you can go deep again. And to also have a scaffold, a spine for the talk. I always used to find that difficult. People say, you're giving a talk, what's the topic? And I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't even know, couldn't get my head right. No, I just so this was a way of doing them. And then the visual stuff as well. I tried doing visual stuff and it didn't go well. This is a whole new approach on it. It's like doing it as an illustrator and as an animator and the caricaturist and things, Yeah, what they call it, was it Kentucky KFC or something like that? Kids Fun Club, I think it was KFC. Yeah, me too. But I don't know. It's difficult. Like I said, when I saw Ajahn Brahm for ages, I wasn't sure what to make of it. And then I knew I was coming here, and I'm very friendly with him. I'll often have lunch with him, and we'll just share. And he's like, "Go ahead, come here and do a talk." But he's surrounded by a lot of fortress of committees, and they're the ones who it's difficult to persuade. Plus, when I first came here, I was very much out of the Burmese mode, and all I wanted to do was do sort of very graphic animated diagrams of what they taught. And all of that group and the BSWA and everything, they just went, no. They came and looked at it, no. They just went, we don't do it, because they're used to Ajahn Brahm's pattern and his views and stuff. So it might be different now. But first of all, this is the first time I've shown this stuff in Australia. So I've only just made it, I spent 2.5 months making this, 10 of them. This is number 18 of this. I've got 13 of them now like that, this style. That's true. Did you actually say something about the elephant? Yeah, I didn't know what she was like, what are you trying to say? And I was like, no, it's just on the coast. And and she was like, woo! So, you really triggered our buttons. I'm not talking about you. No, I didn't realise, So that was a true story, yeah. Yeah, if anyone's dry and thanks everyone for coming, by the way. Really appreciate it. Very welcome.